I wanted to be rich, but now, every decision I make strips me of my humanity. I never thought it would be like this. The power, the success, everything I thought I wanted, it's slowly killing me, piece by piece. It all started when I was 23, young, hungry, full of dreams, and ready to do whatever it took to be successful. I'd sit in my cramped apartment at night, looking at the dim light of my screen, watching people on YouTube, influencers, and entrepreneurs flaunting their riches like it was the answer to everything. And maybe for them it was, but not for me. I remember the exact day it changed. It wasn't some grand moment of realization, no epiphany. It was just a shift in my mindset. I decided to make money my priority, more important than friends, family, and even my own mental health. That's the day I truly began to lose myself. I wish I could tell you that I was a good person when I made that decision. I wasn't. I never was. But I like to think I was, at least in the beginning. I used to care about things like being kind, working hard, and being fair. But the moment I started chasing that dollar, those ideas became expendable. It didn't happen overnight. It never does. It was a slow burn, a subtle corruption, one decision at a time. And each decision I made, it felt like I was peeling back a little more of my humanity. I know you're probably thinking, this is just another cautionary tale, right? Another I lost everything chasing money story. But I swear to you, it's worse than that. Because I didn't just lose my morals. I lost my ability to even feel things the way I once did. Let me explain how it started. I didn't grow up rich. My family wasn't poor, but we weren't living the high life either. My parents worked hard and they expected me to do the same. But I wanted more. I wanted more than what they had. I wanted everything. When I first got into business, it was all about the hustle. You know that mindset, right? The never sleep, work harder than anyone else kind of mentality. I'd skip meals, cancel plans, neglect relationships, all to get a little closer to my goal. And at first it felt good, like I was building something, like I was in control. I remember the first time I hit a big milestone. It wasn't even that huge in the grand scheme of things. Just a small contract, a small payout, but to me it was everything. That day I felt on top of the world. I walked around like I was untouchable, but that's where it started. The first step down the path of no return. The high from that deal was intoxicating, and from that moment on I started to view everything as a transaction. Relationships, friendships, everything had a price tag. What could I gain from it? What was the return? How could I leverage everything around me for maximum gain? I'm not proud of it. In fact, I wish I could go back and change so much. But once you're on that path, it's hard to stop. You get used to the feeling of winning, of success, and it doesn't matter who or what you have to step on to get there. I remember the first time I crossed a line, and it was subtle. So small you wouldn't even notice it if you didn't know what was coming. It was a business partner, a guy who had been with me since the beginning. We were in it together. I trusted him, but he was holding us back. I had to make a choice. Either keep him around and continue struggling to get ahead, or cut him loose and secure the next level of success. He wasn't a bad person. He just wasn't the right fit for what I was becoming, and deep down I knew it wasn't personal. It was just business. So I made the call. I didn't think twice. I had him removed from the project. He was gone in an instant, and within weeks I had a new team in place, one that could push me further, faster. The revenue soared, and I thought I'd made the right choice. But something gnawed at me after that. Something deep inside. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel proud. I just felt hollow. Like I'd sold a part of myself I didn't even know existed. But it didn't matter. I had more money now, more opportunities. So I buried that feeling, pushed it down, and kept moving forward. The deeper I got into the business world, the more I realized that the only thing that truly mattered was success. People were just tools to get there. Friends, family, they were either obstacles or stepping stones. I started to make more decisions like that one. Choices that didn't just affect me, but everyone around me. I cut off friends who weren't helpful to my growth. I manipulated situations to make sure I always came out on top. I lied, cheated, and ignored the consequences because it didn't matter, right? Not as long as I was winning. But the more I won, the more I started losing. Losing myself, losing my compassion, my ability to care about anything beyond the bottom line. Every time I crossed a line, I became more numb. The greed, the ambition, it consumed me, but it also hollowed me out. And the worst part was that I didn't even care. The thing is, there were moments when I did feel the weight of what I was doing. Times when I questioned my choices, when I wondered if it was all worth it. But those moments never lasted long. I'd look at my bank account, at the new luxury car, at the flashy new house, and the doubts would vanish. Because after all, wasn't this what I wanted? Isn't this what I worked so hard for? But deep down, I knew the truth, and that truth is what's haunting me now. By the time I hit 30, I was living the life I'd always dreamed of. On paper, success, wealth, power. I had it all, or at least that's what I told myself. People looked at me with envy, admiration, and awe. I was the kind of person who got invitations to the best parties, was featured in articles, and had a name that rang out in certain circles. But the truth was, I wasn't happy. It was like being surrounded by all this stuff, Money, shiny things, the constant affirmation from strangers. And yet it felt like an echo. It wasn't real. None of it. And I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing something far more important than money. But then again, who cares about that when you're on top, right? That's what I told myself every single day. Every time I passed another milestone, I'd think, this is it. This is what I've worked for. This is the reward. But all that came with it was an emptiness I couldn't fill. The most dangerous part? I didn't know how to stop. I didn't even want to. I'd always justified my decisions with logic. It's just business, I tell myself. I'm doing what's necessary to get ahead. But the first time I truly crossed a line wasn't in business. It was with someone I cared about. Or at least someone I used to care about. Her name was Claire. We'd been together for years. High school sweethearts who found our way into the same college, built a life together. We were close, really close. Or at least I thought we were. But as my business started to take off, my priorities began to shift. I'd wake up early, stay up late, and never make time for her. And when I did, it was just to talk about numbers, deals, or my next big move. The truth was, I was always too busy for her. One night, after a huge deal went through, I decided to take a break from my normal routine. I'd been ignoring Claire for weeks, so I figured it was time to make up for it. I planned a dinner, a romantic evening, something to remind her I still cared. She looked at me across the table, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and doubt. She was trying to be happy for me, trying to make the best of things, but I could see in her face that she was unhappy, and I was too focused on my success to even notice how much she'd been suffering. I told her everything was fine, that everything would be okay, that this was just a phase. I promised her that I would slow down, that I would make more time for us. But deep down, I knew it was a lie. I wasn't slowing down. I couldn't. Because the more I made, the more I needed. I didn't just want money anymore. I wanted validation, power, control, and she wasn't part of that equation anymore. That night, Claire asked me for something simple, something I could have easily given her if I wasn't so lost in my own world. She wanted me to choose her over the business, just for once. But I didn't. I couldn't. So I let her go. I didn't even fight for her. I told her it was for the best, that she deserved someone who could give her what she wanted, someone who could prioritize her, and with that, she left. After she walked out, I didn't cry. I didn't even feel sad. I just felt relieved. Relieved that I didn't have to deal with the emotional baggage. Relieved that I didn't have to explain myself or try to change. I told myself that this was just part of the process. Success meant sacrifice. It meant leaving things behind. But what I didn't realize at the time was that I was sacrificing something far more valuable than a relationship. I'd sacrificed my empathy. The guilt that should have hit me never really did. Sure, I thought about her sometimes, in fleeting moments. But those thoughts were always quickly brushed aside by the new deal I was negotiating, the new business venture, or the next party I was invited to. The world outside kept pulling me further and further from the person I used to be. At first, I thought I could keep everything balanced, but balance was the last thing I was ever going to find. Every deal I made, every person I manipulated, every relationship I sacrificed, it was all just building a house of cards. I began to do things I never thought I would. I manipulated employees, pitted people against each other, pushed others to make decisions that weren't in their best interests, all to get ahead. I justified it every single time. It's just business, I would tell myself. This is the cost of success. But the truth was I was becoming a different person, someone who could look someone in the eye, promise them something, and then completely ignore it the moment it no longer served me. I wasn't just doing it to get ahead. I was doing it because I was addicted to the power, and once you taste that power, it's impossible to let go. Then one day something happened that I wasn't prepared for. A deal that I thought was foolproof, that I thought would secure my future forever, went wrong. It wasn't my fault, at least not directly, but the consequences were catastrophic. I'd been dealing with a shady investor, someone who promised me an astronomical return on my investment, someone who played the game just like I did. We signed the papers, shook hands, and it felt like we'd both won. But about 6 months later, I found out that he'd been using my company as a front to launder money. Everything came crashing down. The police came to my office, I was questioned, and the company's reputation was tarnished. What was even worse, it wasn't just the company, it was me. My name was smeared, my credibility destroyed. People I'd worked with for years turned their backs on me. The public eye that had once glorified me now saw me as a criminal. I had everything to lose, and for the first time I truly understood the price of my decisions. I thought I'd hit rock bottom. But rock bottom came later. It came when I looked in the mirror and realized that the man staring back at me wasn't the person I wanted to be. He was a hollow version of the person I once was, someone who had traded their soul for wealth. And now, no matter how much I tried to undo it, it was too late. I couldn't go back. That's where it all started to fall apart. You see, this isn't a story about how I lost everything, because in many ways, I didn't. I still have the money, the status, and the power, but it's a story about what I've lost in the process. What I've lost, not in material things, but in who I am. The worst part is, I can't stop. When everything around me started falling apart, I didn't realize just how much I'd pushed people away until it was too late. I thought I could just power through it, like I always did. But what I failed to recognize was that my actions had left scars that couldn't just be erased with money or charm. I'd always been good at networking, at making connections. But now, when I picked up the phone, no one answered. Emails went unanswered. Invitations stopped coming in. And I couldn't help but wonder, had it always been this way? Was my success built on genuine connections? Or had it just been about people using me for their own gain? I couldn't answer that. But what I did know was that suddenly I was alone. Completely alone. The first time I realized how truly isolated I had become was when I tried to call Claire. Months had passed since she left. I'd told myself I was over it, that I didn't need her. But the truth was, every time I walked past the places we used to go, every time I saw a couple laughing and enjoying each other's company, the void inside me grew. I tried to reach out to her one night, desperate for some kind of connection, but her number had been disconnected. I sent texts, messages on social media, but it was like she had disappeared from the face of the earth. The thing that hurt the most wasn't that she was gone, it was that I had no one to blame but myself. The cold, hard truth was that I had pushed her away for the sake of my ambition, and now she was gone. I didn't realize how much the weight of all my decisions was affecting me until I started seeing cracks in the facade I'd carefully built. My business, which had once been the cornerstone of everything, started to show signs of decay. The scandals, the failed investments, the betrayals, all of it was beginning to catch up with me. But it wasn't just the business, it was me, the way I acted, the way I couldn't relate to people anymore. I was losing touch with what it meant to be human. There was this one guy, let's call him Mark. Mark was one of the last people I had left in my corner. We'd worked together for years, and even though he was more of a yes man than I'd like to admit, I'd always considered him a friend. One day he came to me with a proposal. It was a huge opportunity, the kind that could push me even further into the elite circle of the wealthy. It was risky, but that's what I did. I took risks. I'd always known that the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. But as Mark spoke, I realized something. I wasn't listening to him. I wasn't thinking about what was best for the company or what was right for the people involved. I was thinking about myself, about how this deal could make me even more untouchable. I agreed to it, and we went ahead with it. But just a few weeks later, the deal blew up in our faces. The ripple effect was huge, and it wasn't just financially. People got hurt, people who had trusted me, people who relied on my decisions. And Mark? He was left holding the bag. I could have fixed it. I could have made things right. But I didn't. I didn't want to admit that I'd made a mistake. Instead, I cut him loose. I blamed him for everything. He was the one who had convinced me to go through with it. He was the one who didn't catch the red flags. It was the easiest thing to do. It was easier to blame him than face the fact that I was the one responsible for everything. I remember one night after the fallout from the deal, I was sitting alone in my penthouse. The city lights outside looked like a blur, a kaleidoscope of noise that was so distant I felt like I wasn't even part of it anymore. I couldn't sleep. My thoughts were racing. I kept replaying the choices I'd made, the things I'd done, and the people I'd hurt. But it wasn't just guilt that kept me up. It was something else. A fear that I couldn't shake no matter how much I tried. I was becoming someone I didn't recognize. I'd built this empire of wealth and status, but at what cost? What was the point of all this if I couldn't even look myself in the mirror anymore? What was the point of being rich if it meant losing my soul in the process? I tried to distract myself with work, but even that felt hollow. I went to parties, bought new things, surrounded myself with people who smiled and nodded, but none of it mattered. Because deep down, I knew it was all an illusion. The more I tried to fill the emptiness, the bigger the hole seemed to get. The more I reached for success, the more I lost myself. Everything came to a head one day when I received a call. It was from my lawyer. "You need to come down to the office," he said. "It's bad. The SEC is investigating you." I didn't even know how to respond. The weight of what he was saying hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd always been so careful, so meticulous. I had the best people working for me, the smartest advisors. But none of that mattered now. The SEC didn't care about how careful I was. They didn't care about my excuses or my justifications. All they cared about was that I had been hiding things, deals that weren't above board, profits that were exaggerated, people that had been taken advantage of. I was going down, and this time there was no way to get out of it. No deal to make it go away. No power play that could save me. The truth was, I had reached the point where no matter how much I wanted to fix it, it was already too late. I had become the very thing I'd sworn I would never be, the person who sacrificed their humanity for the sake of wealth. It all happened so fast. The media came for me. Stories spread like wildfire. Investors pulled out. My reputation crumbled, and with it, so did everything I had built. But what hit me hardest wasn't the loss of money or status. It was the realization that I had no one left. My phone sat silent, my inbox empty. People who once revered me now looked at me like a pariah. I was alone, and I was left to stare at the wreckage of my life, wondering how I could have ever let it get this far. I remember the first day I stepped out of my apartment after the media storm. Everything felt different. The world felt different. Maybe it was the lack of calls, the silences from people who used to always be around. Or maybe it was just the fact that everything I had worked for had evaporated. I didn't know where to start picking up the pieces. The thing is, when you lose everything, you're left with yourself. And honestly, I wasn't even sure who I was anymore. Was I the man who built an empire, or was I just the man who destroyed everything around him for the sake of greed? I tried to get back to the basics, to do the things I used to enjoy before it all spiraled out of control. But I couldn't remember what those things were. I used to love playing guitar. I used to go for long runs when things got stressful. But now, every time I tried, there was an overwhelming feeling of emptiness. The quiet, the absence of anyone felt suffocating. My apartment was eerily silent, just the hum of the fridge and the buzz of streetlights outside. I didn't know who to turn to anymore. The people I had alienated, the relationships I had ruined, they were all gone. And that's when I realized something that scared me more than anything else. I didn't just lose my wealth. I lost myself. I wasn't prepared for what happened next. I thought I'd hit rock bottom, but rock bottom had a way of shifting. It was a slow, painful slide, and every decision I made just dragged me deeper into a hole that felt impossible to climb out of. I started drinking more. At first, it was just a way to numb the pain, a glass of whiskey at night to take the edge off, to quiet the thoughts that would never stop. But soon it wasn't enough. I needed more. I fell into a routine of isolation, drinking alone, and trying to sleep through the days. Every morning was like waking up in a fog, and every night I would just repeat the cycle. I could hear the voices in my head, reminders of the people I'd let down, the promises I'd broken, the mistakes I couldn't fix. But instead of doing something about it, I just let myself sink. I didn't have the energy or the willpower to change anymore. One night, after yet another binge, I woke up in the middle of the night completely disoriented. I didn't know where I was for a second, but when my eyes focused, I realized I was on the couch in my living room, alone once again. The empty bottle of whiskey was on the coffee table, the remnants of the night before all around me. It was in that moment, after everything had fallen apart, that something hit me. Not physically, but emotionally. I was staring at my reflection in the mirror across the room, and I didn't recognize the person staring back at me. Who had I become? I had everything. I had ambition, I had power, I had the world at my fingertips. But it didn't mean a damn thing. None of it did. I couldn't look at myself without feeling disgust. What was the point of all that wealth if it meant turning into someone I couldn't stand? I didn't know what to do, but I knew I couldn't live like this anymore. I had to try. I had to try to change. I picked up the phone and called my old therapist. I hadn't spoken to her in months, maybe years. She picked up, and for the first time in a long time, I heard someone who actually cared about me. "Are you okay?" she asked. I didn't know how to answer, but in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't okay, and that was the first step. We started talking again about everything, about what I had done, who I had hurt, and how I let greed and ambition control my life. But no matter how many sessions I attended, no matter how many apologies I made to people I had wronged, it didn't change the fact that I had lost something important. I had lost myself. It's hard to explain. But slowly I started to realize that I couldn't undo what I had done. There was no going back. I couldn't just fix everything with a few apologies or a few good decisions. The damage was done. And the guilt? The guilt was always going to be there. Every time I thought about what I had sacrificed, my relationships, my integrity, my humanity, I felt this sharp pain in my chest. And it was in those moments when I allowed myself to truly feel the weight of my choices that I realized I could never go back to being the person I once was. But here's the thing. I'm not sure if that's a bad thing. Maybe that version of me was never the person I was meant to be. Maybe all that success, all that wealth was just a mask. Maybe the real me is the one who's broken, the one who's learning to accept the consequences of his actions and trying to rebuild what I've lost. But I know one thing for sure. I'm no longer chasing money. I'm chasing the chance to feel whole again. I think about the moment I hit rock bottom a lot now. I was standing on the edge of everything I once thought I wanted, and when I looked down, I couldn't recognize the person I was. I didn't know who I'd become. I wasn't the person I'd set out to be. I was a hollow version of that person, a stranger wearing my face. The worst part? I couldn't undo the things I'd done. No matter how many apologies I offered, no matter how many people I tried to make amends with, the damage was permanent. I couldn't erase the people I had hurt, the opportunities I had squandered, the relationships I had destroyed. You want to know what happens when you get everything you thought you wanted? You lose everything that really mattered. I remember trying to pick up the pieces of my life, getting back into the routine of work, attending therapy, trying to be a better person. But it wasn't the same. The weight of my past mistakes followed me everywhere. Every decision I made, every move I took, I saw the ghosts of my past looming over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was just going through the motions. I wasn't living, I was existing, and it wasn't enough. One day I got a call. It was from someone I hadn't heard from in a while, someone I thought I had completely severed ties with. It was my old business partner, Mark. "Hey," he said, his voice calm but urgent. "I know we haven't talked in a while, but there's something we need to discuss. A new opportunity. It's big. I know things went south, but I think we can fix this." I wasn't sure what to say. I hadn't talked to Mark since everything fell apart. We hadn't even spoken after I'd cut him loose during the failed deal months earlier. Yet here he was, calling me again with an opportunity, one that, if successful, could get me back to where I was. The temptation was real. I knew how to play the game. I knew how to make the right moves. But this time, something was different. There was a part of me that was eager to dive back into the world I knew so well, the world of wealth, power, and control. But another part of me recoiled. The guilt, the shame, the loneliness, it was still there. I could feel it lurking underneath the surface. But I agreed. I thought, maybe I could redeem myself. Maybe I could prove to myself that I wasn't the person I had become. The deal went forward. We worked on it, day in and day out, pouring our energy and resources into something that felt like it could fix everything. But the closer we got to the finish line, the more I realized I wasn't doing this for the right reasons. It wasn't about redemption. It wasn't about changing who I was. It was about getting back what I lost. I wanted to feel powerful again. I wanted to feel validated. And that's when it hit me. I had become exactly what I had feared. I hadn't learned anything. I hadn't changed. I was chasing the same hollow dream. The deal fell apart, not because of external factors, but because of me. I sabotaged it, intentionally, subconsciously. The fear of becoming the person I used to be, greedy, self-absorbed, disconnected, was so overwhelming that I destroyed the one chance I had to redeem myself. The fallout from the deal was swift. People were angry. Investors lost faith in me. Mark was furious. He was hurt. He had believed in me, trusted me, and I let him down again. I didn't care, though. At that point, I was too far gone to feel anything except exhaustion. It wasn't until I sat alone looking at the wreckage of my life that I realized the truth. I had spent so much of my life chasing something, money, status, power, and I had neglected the most important thing of all, my humanity. I had lost my ability to feel genuine connection. I had abandoned my morals, my integrity, my sense of self, and in the process, I had become a ghost of who I once was. I wasn't sure what to do anymore. I had no path forward, no clear way out. The only thing I could do was face the consequences of my actions. So I made a decision, the only decision that felt right. I left everything behind, the business, the wealth, the constant hustle for more. I walked away from the empire I had built and let it crumble because deep down I knew it wasn't worth it. I wanted to be free from the chains of my past decisions, free from the need to prove myself, to accumulate more, to validate my existence with money. I found a small, quiet place, a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood, far away from the life I had known. I stopped chasing the dream of wealth and success, but even now, every day is a battle. I'm still trying to reconnect with the person I used to be, the person who cared about more than just the bottom line. But it's hard. Sometimes I still feel the pull of the life I walked away from. I wish I could say that everything is better now, that I've found peace and happiness, but that would be a lie. The truth is, I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I can ever be the person I once was, or if I've crossed a line I can never come back from. But what I do know is this. I don't want to be defined by my mistakes. I don't want my life to be a series of empty achievements that meant nothing. Maybe I'll never truly feel whole again. Maybe the person I was is gone for good, but at least I'm trying, and that's more than I could say a year ago.